Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Social Blueprint interview where we interview people in your community who you may or may not know. In the case of today with Gary Samowitz, I think many of you know him, but for those of you that don't, today is going to be an eye-opening conversation. And friends, as we are filming right now, early August 2025, we know it is a tough time out there. Saying that, we are not going to give in, and we are going to take that energy and become positive. And with that, Gary, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Hey, Gary, you've dedicated your whole life to Jewish causes. I'm curious, has that started from when you were very young, this sense of purpose, sense of why, as we would say?
I think so. I went to a Jewish school in South Africa, King David Linksfield, and I went to Hakoah, the youth movement. So that all encouraged me to give back to community and volunteer. But I also just watched my parents contributing. My father was the president of B'nai B'rith in Johannesburg. My mother was a psychologist working in the townships in Johannesburg. So yeah, I remember just my earliest memories are my father dragging us along to his B'nai B'rith events, helping local disadvantaged communities.
Right.
So yeah, I think it's kind of like dugma, ishit, role modeling.
Right.
So I got more involved in community work by just following in my parents' footsteps. And when I arrived in Australia, I finished school in South Africa and then I immigrated to Australia in 2002.
Okay.
And a great way of meeting people was to get involved in community. So I was very involved in Habonim and Orges and CSG and I moved to Sydney, so Jewish Board of Deputies, so all the different acronyms. And that was just a great way of meeting people. And the more I got involved, and now I've been working 20 years full-time in the Australian Jewish community, and it's been wonderful.
Yes, but also, was this early upbringing, especially as you said from your father's point of view, you did engage a lot with non-Jewish people as well, is that correct?
Yeah, so B'nai B'rith in Johannesburg did a lot of work with vulnerable non-Jewish communities, because you're just, South Africa is a complicated country and there's a lot of disadvantage. So I grew up in quite an insular, inward-looking Jewish community. I went to a Jewish school my whole life and had mostly Jewish friends, but it was always instilled in me that we have a responsibility to give back as proud Jews.
Right. And now, I guess turning more specifically to Australia and one of your experiences, stand up. Can you just talk to us about what originally really drew you to that role?
Yeah, so I've been working in Sydney as the Hillel Director for 3 years, and that's mainly working with Jewish university students. So taking a lot of groups to Israel and leadership training and going on all the Orges camps. So I did that for 3.5 years, supporting Jewish university students, giving them the skills and knowledge to be the most effective leaders they could be. And then I was actually about to go to Israel and finish my master's and look at making Aliyah.
Oh, okay.
And I got a call from a guy named Danny Elmagor.
Yes.
And he said, we have an organization here in Melbourne called Jewish Aid. We're looking for a CEO. Do you want to fly down to Melbourne and let's have a chat about if this interests you?
Yeah.
And I flew down and had a great interview, and then I met the board and I kind of shared what my vision is for Jewish Aid, and they hired me. And then a few months later, I packed my bags, moved to Melbourne. There wasn't much money in the bank account of Jewish Aid. There was 4 or 5 months of my salary.
Wow.
So I had to hit the ground running and fundraise and build an organization. My previous job at Hillel was taking groups of Jewish uni students to an Aboriginal community called Tumala and Bogabilla in northern New South Wales. And I really loved that intersection of taking Jewish university students for 10 days and doing social justice work, but doing it in a Jewish setting and having a meaningful Shabbat experience in a remote Aboriginal community. So when this opportunity came up at Jewish Aid, it ticked a lot of boxes for me. It was as proud Jews in the world giving back, but also playing our role as global citizens and helping the wider community.
Right. And I get a couple of questions I have for you. Playing our role in the wider community. Now, fast forward, as I said, August 2025, do you feel like it's even more important than ever?
It's a tough question.
Yeah.
A lot of the work Stand Up used to do was working with Muslim refugees from Sudan in Dandenong and working with remote Aboriginal communities. And we were kind of the Jewish face to the non-Jewish world and building bridges. And after October 7, a lot of those bridges were destroyed almost overnight. 2 decades of relationship building with our non-Jewish friends.
Right.
And a lot of those friendships were not strong enough to withhold the the onslaught of criticism towards Israel and the Jewish community. So I do feel like it's important that we continue that work, that we don't build higher walls around us, but that we continue engaging with the non-Jewish communities in Melbourne and Sydney, and that we are part of Australian society. If we get off every arts board and we stop donating to anything non-Jewish and we stop talking to our non-Jewish friends, we're doing ourselves a disservice long term. An important way of combating anti-Semitism and making Australia a safer place for Jews is to play our role in continuing to be great Australian citizens.
And would you even take that further as an example, and this is a real tactical one, if you will, say you do have non-Jewish friends or colleagues who you sense may just be afraid to say something, because that's what the feedback we've gotten a lot of times. Would you maybe take the initiative to say, hey, listen, we know there's a lot of news out there. If you ever want to chat, we're happy to chat, say something like that?
Yeah, just to chat from as human to human. No need to like list the talking points and Israel is right because of this. Just share your personal story.
Yeah.
What is it that makes you Jewish? Why are you proud to be Jewish? Just share a bit of who you are with your colleagues and friends. You don't need to be an ambassador or an advocate. Just be yourself. But, invite someone over for a Shabbos dinner.
Right.
Share your customs, share your values. I think it's important we all do that at this time where we feel pretty vulnerable and pretty alone.
Right. Now, I'm going to turn now back to something you said before. What I noticed, Gary, is that you've had leadership positions when you were quite young. Can you just talk to us about that leadership, about that ability to take charge?
Interestingly, I was quite naughty in high school. I used to get into a lot of trouble. And
By the way, I have to stop you for a second. That is actually a common trait with a lot of military leaders. But go on.
So I went on a Habo camp at the end of year 10, and one of the madrichim there, one of the leaders, he kind of looked at me and said, I see a leader in you.
Yeah.
And you can use that leadership for good or for bad, but you have potential to do great things, and maybe consider if you want to be a leader that can contribute positively in the world. And that really empowered me. Having him say that really lit something inside me.
Right.
And when I got back to school, I tried to be a positive role model and someone who did good. And then I was selected as a prefect in matric in year 12.
Okay.
And all of a sudden, wearing this blazer, I felt like I needed to be a mensch. I needed to be a good kid. So I wanted to live into that.
Right.
And then ever since, being a madrich, being a leader at Habonim, and in my sports teams, I played rugby for many years.
Right.
I've just felt that leadership is such a privilege. And, I've had great leaders that have mentored and inspired me. And I feel a real sense that I want to pay that forward and be a good leader to others.
Right. And also, we have a lot of teachers and educators that watch the show. For those of you, you can impact one person, can't you?
Yeah. Instead of being told that I was a shitty kid all the time, having someone look at me and say, I see that you have potential to be a great kid.
Right.
It really struck a chord with me and made a big difference in my life.
Right. Incredible. Again, there's a fellow, Stanley McChrystal, who says the exact same thing happened to him at West Point. So
he's the guy who says you have to make your bed every day, isn't he?
No, a different guy, but very, very good story, and we very much worth watching, everyone there. So fast forward now, and again, I apologize for jumping around here. March of the Living. And, I suppose, there are a lot of parallels now with the Holocaust and some feelings that are erupting. But maybe just talk to us about the March of the Living.
Yeah, so I used to go and March the Living in the early 2000s when we used to take a lot of year 11 kids. Okay. March the Living has existed since 2001. Interestingly, it started in 1987 globally. Right. But the survivors in Australia said, we don't want any organised trips going to Poland. Really? So it only started in 2001 in Australia. Sue Hampel and Francis Prince and a few other educators set it up. And the focus was primarily taking year 11 kids. And it was during the Intifada, so there were no Israel programs happening at the schools at that time. Okay. So we were getting 130 kids a year. And it was very powerful. 1 week Poland, 1 week Israel. You're always in Poland on Yom HaShoah. And then you go to Israel and you're there for Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaAtzmaut. So it's an incredible 2-week trip where you're really getting a deep sense of Jewish history, past, present, and future. Right. And, being in the places where the history happened is just very inspiring and very powerful. So I started as CEO of March the Living only a year ago.
Okay.
So it was run by mainly volunteers around kitchen tables for the first 23 years, but they decided they wanted to professionalize.
Right.
And the board has also decided it's all well and good educating Jews about the Holocaust, but if we want to make a real long-term impact, we need to engage more non-Jewish people.
Yes.
We need to take non-Jewish thought leaders to Poland and Israel so that they can be sensitized to the Jewish story. And that's what we've done. You know, the chair of our board is a Lebanese Christian man. He came on the trip in 2019.
I did not know that.
Yeah, he's our biggest donor. He's an amazing man. His name's Adam Geha, and he's the chair of March the Living Australia. This year we took a group of 9 Victorian politicians to Poland with us. It's the first time it's ever been done. Liberal, Nationals, Labour politicians, most of them non-Jews, and they came and they stood in Auschwitz with us in the pouring rain this year. And they had dinner with Mark Spiegelman, the survivor that was with us.
Right.
And, you know, meeting with them and hearing their reflections, just it sounds like it was deeply impactful. They'd come back from that trip with a real sense of wanting to stand up for the Jewish community and speak out against anti-Semitism here.
Yeah, I've never heard a single person who's been on a trip from here or anywhere in the world who has not said it's made a lasting impact. Is that your sense as well?
Yeah, it's quite remarkable the depth of connections people make in such a short time. You got this group. This year I had 47 Australians on the bus. This is separate to the politicians. And all ages, 22 to 85. Okay. Some were families, some came by themselves. And it was just remarkable the deep relationships that were formed and the level of just, you know, learning about the 1,000 years of Jewish history in Poland before.
Right.
And then going and visiting death camps. So it's not just all death and destruction.
Right.
We want to celebrate Jewish life that existed there for so many years. So we might go to a death camp, but that afternoon we might go to a synagogue that hasn't been prayed in for years, and we'll dance and sing and we'll celebrate Jewish life. So yeah, it's just a very impactful program that I had a reunion on Sunday for the 2005 adult group.
Okay.
A 20-year reunion. And we had 40 people show up at the Melbourne Holocaust Museum. And we went around in a circle and everyone just shared how the program impacted them. And it really did. So there's something special about this program. And what's really special is that we always have survivors with us.
Right.
We always, and this group had 5 survivors, the one from 2005.
That's a lot.
Unfortunately, 4 of them have passed away. But we had a survivor with us this year. I'm struggling to find survivors who can travel with us next year.
Yeah.
So it's been such a privilege to have survivors on the trip, but we have a real challenge with Holocaust education moving forward, that in 5-10 years' time there won't be survivors alive to share their stories, and the onus is on us to be the bearers of their testimonies and to educate about the Holocaust without them here. It's a huge responsibility. There's a quote from Elie Wiesel, you listen to a witness, you become a witness. So, you know, listening to survivors share their stories, now we have the responsibility to share their stories with other people.
And do you feel that this education, obviously it's such an impactful part of the last 100 years of Jewish life, does it continuously need to be reinforced?
Yeah, March the Living, going to Israel after was always uplifting. It was Yom Ha'atzmaut and celebrating. After the darkness in Poland, we'd go to Israel and we'd have an amazing time and there'd be a lot of joy and celebration. Going to Israel now after October 7 is very challenging.
Okay.
You know, we arrived on a Monday night. On Tuesday morning, we were on a bus down south to Sderot and the Nova site to hear about October 7 and the impact it's had on Israeli society. We actually had a group of October 7 survivors with us in Poland. There were 70 Israelis who had survived October 7. Some of them were recently released hostages.
Wow.
Agam Berger, Eli Sharabi, Keith Siegel. 2 months before they were in Gaza as hostages, and now they're with us in Auschwitz on March the Living. It was incredibly powerful. But yeah, Israel was challenging. Going to these sites, and you can't not go to Israel.
Yeah.
You can't go to Israel and not go and see those sites.
Of course.
So yeah, for some of our participants, it was even more challenging going to Israel. It was so raw. You know, you go to the Nova site, you see all the pictures.
Yeah.
So my job is to make sure we're doing this responsibly and debriefing each day. I met with every participant one-on-one when we got back, just to make sure people are processing the experience and thinking what can they take from that experience to integrate into their lives here. So it's very empowering, but it's also traumatic. These trips are traumatic, and we need to do them responsibly so that people don't come home and they feel empowered to act, and they don't feel paralyzed with fear and trauma.
Right. And on that, one of the positive themes that we are hearing, though, a lot is the strength of the Israeli youth, especially the soldiers. Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's horrific that 900 Israeli soldiers have been killed in the last 2 years defending their country. And we heard of plane loads full of Israelis trying to get back to Israel after October 7 because they wanted to serve.
Right.
And we were in Israel on Yom HaZikaron, and we went to a kibbutz Sorah. And after the Yom HaZikaron ceremony, we sat and had discussions with Israeli soldiers. And they have been in Miluim, they've been in reserve duty for 300 days out of the last 500 days, hardly seen their kids. And I think what's remarkable that's come out of this horrific situation is that sense of service and that sense of community, and that's the sense of the next generation are not just lazy kids staring at their phones all day.
Right.
They care about Israel and the Jewish people and our future, and are willing to sacrifice their lives to ensure that that Am Yisrael Chai.
Yes.
So I think that's been one of the most amazing things that's come out of this, and not just Israeli soldiers in Israel, but if you look at the local community here in Melbourne.
Yeah.
The amount of organizations that have popped up. I mean, you've interviewed a lot of the people that have set up organizations, but there's this real surge of people wanting to ensure that they are not bystanders today.
Yes.
That they are going to, when people are writing their history books in 50 years' time about this generation, that they're going to be written about as having stood up for Israel and the Jewish people at this very vulnerable time in our history.
And that is one of the key things that when we were discussing before speaking, that you are very, very big on. Is that correct?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're channeling this fear and trauma that we're currently experiencing into more deeply engaging with our Jewishness.
Yeah.
Go to shul if that's your thing. Go to hear Jewish artists. Go to the Jewish Museum and see the latest chutzpah exhibition of Jewish artists sharing their work. There's a beautiful new Beit Midrash where they're learning Jewish texts. Watch movies. I just want people to lean into their Jewishness and find positive aspects. Maccabi, sports. Don't be Jewish out of fear of anti-Semites. Don't let the anti-Semites define your Judaism. Let's use this moment in time to, instead of using all our energy to fight the Clementine Fords and all these anti-Semites making life a misery for us, unfollow them and rather follow positive Jewish people and go to more Jewish events and research your family history. I just want that to be something we take away from this experience, and not just to be up all night thinking, is there a future in Australia? Should I be booking the next flight to Israel, making Aliyah? Let's just create such a vibrant, dynamic Jewish community that people want to be Jewish and want to be involved.
Right. I can't think of anything better, especially, as I said, on a very, very tough week here. Gary, on to something that's a little bit more fun, if you will. And I mentioned Maccabi, but you are quite into training, aren't you?
I am. Speaking of Maccabi, I went on 2 Maccabees for rugby, which was the best experience ever, traveling with 26 guys to Israel for 3 weeks. We came last in 2005, and then we went back in 2009 and won gold.
Okay.
So that was just an amazing experience. But ever since then, I've just always signed up for events, half marathons, half Ironmans, and I've always trained with others. And it's a big part of my life, my 5:30 a.m. wake-ups and meeting friends and going and doing hard things.
Right.
And now I'm doing a lot of trail running, 50K trail races and 100K trail races. And I think it prepares me for life. The suffering I endure on those mountains, it makes me reflect on life, and it gives me that resilience muscle, which makes me hopefully a better father and a better CEO, that I know I can deal with hard things in the mountains, and I can deal with hard things in life. So yeah, I've really loved the journey of signing up for events and doing them. Keeps me fit and healthy, it's social, and it's gives you good perspective on life, I feel.
Yeah, and a lot of times, even more than going to a psychologist, just getting out there for a run can do you a lot of good.
Yeah, And now that I'm training for this 100-kilometer trail run, I have to go to the Dandenongs and the Mornington Peninsula every week and go and run in the mountains. And that's just the journey of getting to the start line is what I care more about.
Right.
And I just love going and being in nature. So it ticks a lot of boxes when it comes to mental health. And yeah, and I encourage others to do it as well. Sign up for something scary that's going to get you out of bed on a cold wintry morning in Melbourne.
Right. And goal setting 101, friends.
Yeah. So yeah, I've got marathon coming up, and I went for a run this morning with 4 guys at 6 a.m. at Caulfield Park, and there were lots of other people running. The world's a happier place, I feel, at 6 a.m.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more, as my wife will attest to it for sure. Gary, I'm curious, again, jumping around here a little bit, you've lived in both Melbourne and Sydney. When you think about the different communities, any thoughts about that?
Yeah, firstly, they have quite a different demographic makeup. So Melbourne's much more Polish,
okay,
and Sydney's much more Hungarian, and there's a lot more South Africans in Sydney, I think. So that impacts the kind of general vibe in the community. The Melbourne community is much more centrally located. Sydney's a little bit more spread out.
Right.
But the way the communities are structured is very different, because Melbourne, we don't have this Jewish communal appeal that raises money for 26 organisations.
I see, the umbrella, right.
The umbrella. In Melbourne, it's like each organisation for themselves. So I think Melbourne's actually a much more dynamic, vibrant place to be Jewish, because there's so many organisations and things are popping up all the time.
Right.
In Sydney, it's a much more organised community. There's a strategic plan for the next 10, 20 years. You can't just go open a new high school if you want, because the JCA will say, we actually have enough high schools. Right. We'll guarantee your kids can go to that high school. So they have this, so it's a better planned community, Sydney, but it just can also impact the dynamism and right. the innovative, characters, which we have a lot more in Melbourne.
Right.
But we have a lot of tiny, struggling Jewish community organisations in Melbourne, because we're all going to the same 150 major donors to ask them to fund us, and we're all paying our own bookkeepers. And so Melbourne could be a better organised community.
Right.
We have a lot of Jewish schools in Melbourne,
yes.
which will be a big discussion in the next few years about what will happen when Scopus moves to Caulfield, which is very exciting.
Yes.
What impact will that have on the other Jewish schools nearby? I just hope someone's asking those questions and thinking about the next 20 years in Melbourne Jewish community and what it will look like and how can we make it very effective.
Yeah, I think there's no perfect answer to positives and negatives to anything. I was just curious about that, but it is interesting about the demographic split. But now it sounds like you're back here for a while.
Yeah, I've been living in Melbourne for 16 years, but I've always worked in Sydney as well. So I worked on the Hakoah Club project. We raised a lot of money to build a big Jewish community centre and sports facility in Paddington in Sydney.
Right.
And so I was travelling to Sydney almost every 2 weeks. Now with March the Living, it's a national organisation, so I go to Sydney every month. I stay with my parents, go do a nice Bondi to Bronte in the morning. So yeah, for the last 25 years, I've lived across Sydney and Melbourne, I feel.
Right. Gary, we know that your time is short, and this has been incredibly fascinating, especially, as I said, uplifting, ironically, during this very, very tough time. Any closing words or thoughts for our audience?
Yeah, I mentioned it earlier in the interview, but that concept of dugma ishit, being a role model to your kids and to anyone watching you. If your thoughts and actions were contagious, would you want other people to catch them? And so I'm just very mindful of that. I've got 2 daughters who are in year 8, twins, and I've got an 11-year-old son. He turned 11 yesterday. Wow. And I just want to think, what kind of Jewish community do I want to create for them? And what kind of, proud Jewish identity do I want to instill in them? So just being very intentional with the way I parent. What kind of music do we listen to in the car? What kind of discussions do we have around the Shabbos table? Just to make them feel proud Jews, that there's a lot inherent within our Jewish community and our history that they want to continue, so that they'll be having those same conversations around the Shabbos table with their kids one day. So that I just wanted to leave you with that idea of, are you being a role model to those around you?
Gary, I couldn't think of a better comment, especially in this time where it seems like the person that screams the loudest gets heard. Maybe it's just your actions that actually do speak the loudest, as that saying goes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Gary. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Greg. It's been great.